Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you probably already know that this is my deep dive into a beautiful deck called the Egyptian Tarot by C.C. Zane and the Brotherhood of Light. And just in case you are new to this channel and to this deep dive, let me give you a brief overview of what's going on here. Every night before I go to bed, I do a daily draw from my not new, but from this deck that I'm trying to explore, the Egyptian Tarot. And I've got two copies of it. I have a mass market colored version of it, which was put out around 2003, 2004. And I've got an older version of the deck, which I believe was printed when I was born. I'm not going to say the year of my birth again. If you really want to find that out, check the previous videos. But I want to keep that one as pristine as possible because it's not readily available and the price is not cheap. So I shuffle the colored version, the mass market version, the cheap version, but still beautiful version, and I do my daily draw. And then I find the matching card in my older deck, the charcoal gray and white deck, and I look at them and I see how they might reveal themselves in the coming day. But I don't stop there. Yeah, I want to have a little bit of help. And I have a helper deck. I have an assistant deck. It's the Tarot of the Holy Light by the beautiful Christine Payne-Towler. And I do a 3-card draw from that deck because while I'm not absolutely fluent in that deck, I am more comfortable with that deck than I was in the past. I did a deep dive into that deck about a little over 6 months ago. And if you want to check that deep dive out, feel free. I've got a whole playlist of that deep dive. So now I'm using that deck as my helper deck. And I do a 3-card spread, typical 3-card spread with a little twist. The first card is the energy, the significance of the daily draw card for me for the next day. The second card is the challenge, and that challenge can be a positive challenge, something to live up to, something to aim for, or a negative challenge, something to avoid, depending on the card that appears in that spot. And then the third card is the advice or the outcome. I tend to lean more into advice, but sometimes it does seem to be an outcome. And so then I go to sleep and I wake up and I live my day, and then I come back and I review what it was that I saw. I do a little bit of analysis and see how those cards either reflected themselves, revealed themselves and their significance for me during the day, or they might not. And more often they do than they don't. And so that's what we're doing. I've got the daily draw already lined up for you. Let me show that to you right now. This is a beautiful, these are beautiful decks, aren't they? You saw the two cards. You saw the same card in two different decks, the color version and the charcoal gray and white version, right? The color version is much crisper, right? Easier to see. Let me show you the two cards right now, and let's see if you notice any differences between them. Yeah, they're both the Queen of Swords. Here we are, right there. Can you see the differences? Yes, the bottom of the card has different art. The bottom of the cards have different art. The constellations appear to be different, don't they? They're both the same constellation, just drawn with a different number of stars, and yeah, there it is, a different number of stars. But they're both the same constellation. And what constellation might that be? That is the constellation of Virgo. And you're saying, wait a second, what? Virgo? How could it be Virgo? This is the Queen of Swords. Swords is air. Virgo is earth. How can this be? How can this be? Well, this is how it be. The Queen of Swords and all of the swords are earth element cards in this deck. All of the coins are, guess what? Air element cards in this deck. So we just have to get over it. And these two queens are also drawn very differently, right? But we get basically the same idea. Now, the headdress on the queens are different. The headdresses on the queens are different. But you see that they're both, here, let me do it this way. You see that they're both carrying an offering, right? They're carrying an offering to some sort of burning, maybe inner like an altar, maybe. Yeah. Both of them Egyptian queens, right? Both of them beautifully dressed. Both of them with beautiful hair. And it's a great card. Both of them are great cards. And again, this is the Queen of Swords, which points to Virgo, which is the domicile of which planet? Mercury, from which these mutable earth vital attributes enter our world. These vital mutable earth attributes enter our world through Virgo in this card. And Virgo for me is one of the signs that is important because my mother is, to my eyes, an ultimate, what is the word I'm looking for? It's that thing where the superior exemplar of Virgo being. Yeah. So what is Virgo? Who is Virgo? So Virgo, as beautifully described in the book for one of the books for this deck that I'm using as a reference, called How to Read Tarot. This book by these authors is a very handy guide because the book by the Brotherhood of Light, written by C.C. Zane, is part of for this deck, is part of a larger course of study, and it's not the easiest book to read as a reference for reading this deck. Yeah, you've got to search for, it's harder to find the information. It's just a little bit annoying. Whereas the other book that I'm using, How to Read Tarot, is a very easy reference to use. So the reference material in that book is very helpful, and it describes Scorpio very nicely. What does it say? It says that Scorpio is intensely active mentally. Yeah? Did I say Scorpio? I mean Virgo. Virgo is intensely active mentally. But in what way? It's not the intense mental activity of Aquarius, right? Or the intense mental activity of dueling poles of like Gemini. This is the analytical kind of active mentality. Yeah? Virgo loves to deal with the facts rather than theories. Yeah? Analyzing the facts, charting out the facts. Studious, scientific, and mentally alert is Virgo, this mutable earth being. Virgo is never satisfied until he, she, or they know the desired results will be attained. That's totally my mother. She wants to be sure that what she thinks is right is going to happen. And until she's sure it's going to happen, she's not going to start picking and poking and trying to make things happen right. You know what I mean? But Virgos are careful, they are serious, and they are contemplative. And they have a contemplative approach to everything in life. And that kind of lifestyle requires time. They're not quick. I'm not going to say that they're not on the ball. It's just that they're not instant reactors like perhaps a Gemini might be, or even a Capricorn might be. Capricorns will probably react pretty quickly. But a Virgo needs time because they're organizing all this stuff in their heads. They have an ability for placing things in their proper order, prioritizing. Yeah? And they're severely discriminative. Not discriminative like, as in like racial discrimination. I hate Asian people, I hate black people, I hate white people. Not that kind of discrimination. It's the discrimination of this is a good thing and this is a bad thing, and there the twain should meet. Yeah, discriminating between the correct way to do things and the incorrect way to do things. And the perfectionist, the discrimination of the perfectionist, which Virgos are seen very critically as perfectionists, right? And because of that, they're inclined to be perceived as very critical. Now, I often think of Scorpios as being very critical, but I also know that my mother is very critical. And they're apt to judge very severely, which can be to their detriment, can be a barrier to them actually achieving what they want, because they can start pushing people away, the people that could actually help them get what they want, that could help them put the things in their proper order, that can get the results that they really want. So if Virgo can move beyond or avoid the trap of being hyper discriminatory, being inclined to their critical natures and judging, they can get a lot done if they're given the amount of time that they need. And that was a very interesting thing for me today. Yeah. And you see in this card, what's happening? We see this perhaps a queen, perhaps a goddess, bringing an offering to an altar of fire. And we imagine that this queen or this goddess knows that this is the correct amount of fruit, this is the correct amount of incense, this is the correct amount of this, and it's all arranged in the correct order as it's being offered at the correct time, at the correct part of the day. You know, right? So this was my Virgo day. Very, very interesting. And so after I looked at that card, I thought, does that mean I'm going to be my mother the next day? Let's see. I could already sense how I would benefit from approaching the day. At that time, the next day, but now this day. But still, I drew my 3 cards. And let me show you those 3 cards right now. You just saw those 3 cards in order from left to right were the Hermit upright, the King of Discs reversed, and the 10 of Swords upright. Now, this deck, the Tarot of the Holy Light, is intended to be shuffled with reversals. And so I do that. Every time I riffle shuffle, I cut the deck, I turn half of it around and I riffle shuffle. And then I cut the deck, I turn half of it around and I riffle shuffle. Every time. And it's interesting that in this deep dive, I haven't gotten as many reversals as I've gotten at other times of using this deck. So this time around, the Tarot of the Holy Light is being super gentle with me. Perhaps it knows that I'm in a little bit of an enjoyable yet very stressful situation right now and wants to give me all the support it possibly can. Not to say that reversals are bad cards or mean cards or trying to get at you or trying to poke at you or trying to bring you down. That's not what I'm trying to say. However, it is easier to read the upright card. Yeah, the reverse cards take a little bit more introspection, take a little more reflection. What area is the reversal pointing to? That takes a little bit more contemplation. And that contemplation time it's more difficult for me to find that contemplation time these days as I'm beginning this winter camp. I'm teaching at a winter camp. Do you know that? I'm teaching at a winter camp here in the middle of nowhere. And so finding time for this deep dive is not impossible, but my time is limited because there are a lot of distractions because I'm doing something that I'm not used to doing. So that being said, the Tarot of the Holy Light is being very gentle with me these days, and I'm very grateful to the deck for that. But again, we had in the energy, the significance of the Queen of Swords, which again is an Earth card in this deck. The significance of this for me today was the hermit, which is interesting. And then the challenge was the king of discs in reverse. I almost said something nasty. The king of discs in reverse. And then the advice or the outcome was the 10 of swords. Now, who is the hermit in the Tarot of the Holy Light? The hermit, did you see? The hermit is Leo, which is uncommon for those of us who were raised on the Rider-Waite-Smith, the Waite-Smith decks drawn by Pamela Coleman Smith. Yeah, where often that card, the hermit card, I think is associated with Virgo, which is interesting because this is Virgo, right? But here, the hermit is associated with Leo, which is my sun sign, by the way. My sun sign is Leo. I am the hermit. Now, so the hermit points to Leo, which is the domicile of the sun, from which these fixed fire vital attributes enter our world. And you can see in the card the sun, right? The hermit is holding the sun in front of him, her, them. And you see the large disc behind the head of the hermit and the eye in that disc. And you also see the bird flying forth from that disc. Do you see at the foot of the hermit, there is the what looks like a dragon biting its own tail, giving us the idea of an Ouroboros? Do you see the snake around the disc in the sky up here, also reminding us of an Ouroboros? Do you see the crozier of the bishop in the hands of the hermit? Which side is that on? Right over here, on this side. We have the crozier on that side and the sun on the other, and the sun in the morning and the moon at night. Which is interesting because we don't see the moon in this card. In most of the cards in the Tarot of the Holy Light, the sun and the moon are present almost all the time, but we only see the sun in this card, which is interesting. So what is this card? Well, here are some of the ideas or the symbols that were revealed in this beautifully drawn card. We have the hermit, him, her, their selves, who is a natural shaman, a self-initiated priest, which kind of makes, it's kind of like me, right? If you're interested, I had a very interesting vision vision during a meditation I did when I had first gotten back into meditation many years ago. But that vision still is etched into my mind. And if you're curious about that, let me know in the comments below. But here we have, again, the hermit. This hermit lives with Sophia and nature. This hermit is, I think, instructed by both Sophia and nature. And the hermit's wisdom springs forth from the teaching and the mentorship of both Sophia and nature. Because this is also the alchemical Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus. Trismegistus means thrice born Hermes, which is an alchemical, what the early fathers were to the Christian religion. Yeah? Hermes Trismegistus is to Hermeticism and to Western esoterica and alchemy. So this is a representation of Hermes Trismegistus. And the thrice born idea reminds us of the continuity of consciousness. Now, when one body dies, consciousness, the mind, spirit does not die. And also, this being could also be in its current incarnation, the natural immortal, the one who will no longer die, the one who has transcended death within the physical body. Also, as the hermit, this figure arranges daily life to avoid worldly demands. This figure is standing up from the Ouroboros of both eternity and the cycles of life. This figure you see the Ouroboros down at the bottom is a sign of both eternity and the cycles of life, of eating and digesting and creating. So the hermit here, Hermes, has risen above that, has transcended that, and holds the sun, the sign, the planetary, and holds the sun, which lives in Leo, right? But you notice that the Hermes, is holding the sun in front, shining the light not within, but out into the world, so that the entirety of the world is lit by the light of the sun, and every dark, shadowy crevice, for example, the shadows of our unconscious, is lit up and revealed. Yeah, Leo banishes the darkness of the unconscious shadow and reveals the treasures that lie within. The hermit holds the staff of the bishop, so the hermit can lead those who wish to become and are accepted as mentees to this mentor. We also see in the sky the mind of the eternal self, which shines through yet another celestial Ouroboros. Yeah, our eternal selves, our vision, our consciousness sees through into time in this card. And both the vision of the eternal nature of self and the vision of the incarnate, here perhaps even immortal self, they're all looking in the same direction, being lit by the sun, by the divine guide, the heavenly guide, right? And here, the Holy Spirit is guiding self. The Holy Spirit, also can be Sophia, is guiding the eternal nature towards the hermit, looking out into the world and also looking within. So it's a beautiful, deeply, richly meaningful card. And suggesting a rising aboveness to the day as experienced in the Queen of Swords, Virgo, to rise above those potential traps that Virgo can fall into. Maybe that's what that meant, right? And it was the sun shining the light out. So the next card, the challenge, here was the King of Discs in reverse, which you can see. Well, let me show it to you upright. It's a beautiful card. Now, I fall in love with this kingly figure in this card. This gorgeous, gorgeous king. And they've got their feet on a disc of the 7 planets in the earth. There's a disc of the celestial lights above their head. They've got a shield in their hands, and they've got this beautiful flowing gown around them. They're straddling a raptor beneath. The regal raptor of the regal eagle. And this is Taurus. This is Taurus. Another earth sign. Another earth, sign. And Taurus is the domicile of Virgo. I'm sorry, not Virgo, Venus. I do that too often. Taurus is the domicile of Venus. And so the King of Discs points to Taurus, which is the domicile of Venus, from which these fixed earth vital attributes enter our world. Taurus is fixed earth, right? But when this card is reversed, we've got some problems. What are the problems? The King of Discs, while in upright is able to manage and to work with the resources around them, is able to work with other people and get the best out of them, is able to enjoy and be bountifully generous to those around them, is able to take pleasure in the beauty of the the regal kingdom, right? But in reverse, we've got something that's akin to Midas. And there's a little bit of potential greediness here. Yeah. But this king beyond greediness, has relational problems. This king loses track of the relational values that he has, and demands more of those around him than he really has the right to demand of them. He resents time spent away from business and the potential for gain and profits. He has the potential to crush everyone around him or her or them, no matter who they are. Even those he thinks that he loves, he can crush them. Like, do you remember the story of Midas? When does Midas finally realize that he's gone too far? When he's turned his daughter into gold and basically killed her. Because just as this king does, Midas indulged his impulses without question to consequences, without question to whether he has the right to do what he is trying to do or is doing. And so here we have this king alchemically linked to the unquenchable thirst of perhaps Midas, which is different from the unquenchable thirst of perhaps a Scrooge, which is one who shuts themselves away in their greed and hides and protects things, or a Gollum, which is a more modern, well, no, it's not, that's a little bit more modern. It's not hugely modern, but yeah, that Gollum feeling, that Gollum kind of character, that's not Midas. Midas is regal, is important, knows their self-importance, and interacts with those around him, her, or them, and will crush them because they have the divine right of kinghood. So that is, I think, a challenge in the negative sense. Yeah, be careful. Don't get too greedy. Not necessarily only about money, not only necessarily only about stuff, but also greedy about time, greedy about wanting to accomplish things, as a Virgo might be wanting to accomplish. And so the next card was an upright one, but not the happiest card of the deck, right? The Ten of Swords. And you can see in this deck, you have a beautiful image of the sun, but that's not such a happy sun. That sun is crying a huge drop of a tear, through which radiates a beautiful rainbow. And to this side of the card, we have kind of a window, or it could be like a little, anyways, a window. Let's call it a window. And in that window, we see the androgyne, the figure that is both male and female. And that androgyne is not so alive anymore. That androgyne has been pierced with many, many swords. Probably 10 of them, because that's what the card is, the 10 of Swords. And the significance of this card here is all of the air signs, all of the planets that are the domicile, that live in those air signs. So what is that? The 10 of Swords points to Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini, the domiciles of Venus, Saturn, and Mercury, from which these cardinal, fixed, and mutable air, vital attributes enter into the world from all these different places, because this is the end of the numbered cards of the air suit. And here the swords are air, just as the King of Discs here is Earth in the Tarot of the Holy Light. So we've got all of this diversity of energy in this one card, this diversity of attributes in this one card. And while this card is very, very dark in the Waite Smith deck, drawn by Pamela Coleman Smith, do you remember that card? Drawn by Pamela Coleman Smith? What do we have? We have a figure lying on the ground. The sky is pitch black. There might be a sunrise in the distance or a sunset in the distance, but it's a really, really dark sky. And the figure lying on the ground has 10 swords stuck in their back, and there's blood. From what I recall, there's blood seeping out, or it could be the cloak, but I think it's blood seeping out. This is a really, really violently painful card in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. However, here we've got the sun. The sun drives light into every corner of this card, just like the sun shone in this card as well, right? The sun in this card lit up everything, including the shadow of the unconscious. Here the sun also lights up all the corners in every quarter. But you'll also notice, again, like I mentioned, the sun, which is shining so much bright light, has a very large teardrop streaming from their eyes, which begs the question, why is the sun weeping for us? Why does the divine weep for us? Perhaps because we suffer. So why do we suffer in a loving, abundant universe? These are the questions I think we want to ask in this card. Why do we suffer? Is it because the divine is insensitive or ignores the creatures of their creation? No. Here, we can see the tear, yeah? The divine sheds a tear for us, sheds a huge tear. However, we can also see that through that teardrop shines a radiant rainbow of hope, knowledge, inspiration, and invention. We can create, this shows us a broad spectrum of possibilities. The rainbow is the diversity of both human experience and options. Now, this shows us that not only are we a very diverse biological group, but we also have a very diverse range of options and potentials available to us. Many more than we could possibly imagine. And yet still we have the androgyne here stabbed in this little window, which reminds us that at this point, at this time, maybe it's over. What does that mean to you when you hear that it is over? It's over. It's the end. In Korean, "끝." What does that mean? It could be loss. It could also be completion. And we often think only of the loss, of the pain of the Ten of Swords, but it could also still be a completion, right? It's time to let go and move on. And our fear of the endedness of things often stems from our fear of the ending of life, right? So where are we going to put our focus? Are we going to put our focus on the mortality of this physical stuff that we are inhabiting? Or are we going to put our focus on the eternal natures of the eternal beings that we are here, co-creating these beautiful bodies that we inhabit? It doesn't mean that we want to ignore or diminish the beauty and the possibility and the potential of these beautiful bodies that we are co-creating. But we don't have to be afraid of what we imagine as the death of this body, because if we put our attention on the eternal natures that we are, if we identify with the eternity that we are, the nature of self in the biggest sense of self, there's nothing to fear. Right? And it's very interesting to me, the importance of the sun in both of these cards. Another thing that was very interesting to me in this whole layout was that we started off with Mercury with the Queen of Swords, right? Queen Mercury in Virgo. Virgo is the domicile of Mercury. And then in the King of Discs, we had Venus in Taurus, right? Taurus is the domicile of Venus. So Mercury and Taurus. And then in the Ten of Swords, where are we? Here we are. In the Ten of Swords, this is not the King of Discs. This is not the Queen of Swords in the Egyptian tarot. And yet we have Venus and Mercury visiting us again in this deck through both Libra and Gemini. Now, Libra is the domicile of Venus again, and Gemini is the domicile of Mercury again. So we've got those planets visiting us again here in the advice of perhaps something to avoid in this card. Now, the Queen of Swords, her planet, is here in in Taurus. The physicality of, in Libra. The balancing of stuff and the thinking about stuff. And the Mercury from, let's see. Okay, so Mercury, which was in Virgo, is here for us in Gemini, which is the thinking about dualities and the split brain and bringing the split brain together, right? And the Venus, which was in the King of Discs, is here again in Libra, the balancing of things. So we have the potential of both of these planets coming in and disrupting or being out in those other King of Discs, which again was reversed and was in a warning place, but the Queen of Swords was in a potentially beneficial place. I think I might be rambling here. So, what is this all telling me? Now, just a brief overview again, and I'm sorry, let me move my leg. My leg is falling asleep. Yeah, the Queen of Swords, Virgo, was that analytical, the perfectionist potential, but analytical, organizing things, getting stuff done, active mentality. Active mentality. Yes. The Hermit was telling us to be our own guide, to light up the darkness around and within, and to also be ready to be the shepherd, right? To shepherd the ones that we accept as mentees. Also, that we are guided by both Sophia, the Holy Spirit, and nature. And we are Leo. We are the sun, and we're holding the sun. But the King of Discs was here to warn us that we want to be careful of overstepping our bounds, of ignoring our relationships and stepping on other people in order to get the stuff that we think needs to get done. Because the advice or the warning advice is that if we do that, if we fall into that trap of the obstacle, then we're going to have that Ten of Swords endedness, completedness of pain and suffering. And we might get there anyways, but maybe we could mitigate some of that suffering if we don't fall into the trap of the King of Swords, of King of Discs reverse. And instead, we can follow the possibilities of the sun shining through into our world, shining through the suffering that we have experienced. So, if that makes sense, let me tell you about my day, because this really did end up revealing a lot for me for the day. And as I get into this again, let me just tell you that I do a daily draw with a thing called the Charmcast Tarot, which are little charms of each card from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I do a daily draw, and then I wear my charm around my neck during the next day. And the charm for today was the Page of Swords. So I thought, in addition to all of this, what I want to do during the day is keep that beginner mind, keep my curiosity, and keep my mind open instead of being too rigid as Virgo can sometimes be, right? And I think that ended up being beneficial for me. So after all of this, looking at the cards before going to sleep, I decided that today was the day to be my Virgo self, to embody my inner Virgo, which we all have, yeah? No matter whether your sun is in Virgo, your moon is in Virgo, Virgo is your rising, or you don't have any of that. We all have all of the potentials for all of the signs within us, and we can bring forth the qualities and attributes of each of those signs when we need it, if we've practiced doing it. And some things take more finesse, take more practice to access, but it's all there because we are, as Jung would say, ourselves are whole. The wholeness of all of human nature is here within us. So why was I saying all of that? Well, because I wanted to embody, I wanted to incarnate my inner Virgo today, because I decided that if I didn't do that today, I was going to be in trouble. What do I mean? Well, I've been somewhat winging the beginning of this camp. The camp only started yesterday. And so I was kind of winging the first couple of days to see what kind of students there were and what they would require and how we could accomplish the goals that we had set out for the students together during the course of this camp. And they're going to be presenting a story in somewhat theatrical form. And so I realized that today was the day for me to really chart out the process of what we will be doing during this camp. What the first hour, the goals for the first hour would be, the second hour, the third, well, not so much the first or the second because those had already passed, but the goals for the third hour, the fourth hour, the fifth hour, the sixth hour. Yeah? Start charting all of that out. And I didn't get it all charted out, but I got a good chunk of it charted out. And I realized that, okay, after this, before we get to the end of this plan that I was beginning to synthesize, that I would need to go through some of the steps before I could fill in the rest of the chart. Does that make sense? So I decided that being Virgo for me today would be of great benefit. And that's what I did. I taught my first I did a rudimentary beginning outline of the next classes before the class, taught the classes, and then started doing the rest of the chart, and then stopped and realized, no, I need to teach a few more classes before I go farther in my planning. And so in my teacher mode rather than my planner mode, I tried to be, I think, the light of the hermit. I tried to be the one who was shining and guiding and mentoring the students, which I think is my role here in this camp. And so I taught classes and I started doing all that work, and I got some interactions with a couple of the teaching assistants that are around, and I was very careful of not trying to step on any toes because I didn't want to do the King of Discs in reverse. I didn't want to be the tyrant demanding things happen the way that I thought they should be happening. And I'm generally not that kind of person, and I don't really do that to my knowledge. And yet I still wanted to be careful. Does that make sense? So I tried to be careful. And yet, after lunchtime, I think it was, I started developing this weird headache. And I continued working after lunch, and this headache started growing. And I taught 2 hours later. I had a 5-hour class day today, not the highest number of class hours I have per day in this camp, but 5 hours is a nice chunk of teaching. So after those 2 hours of class after lunch, I decided to take a Tylenol because the headache I had wasn't just a little transient little bit of tension, but apparently was the beginning of a headache. And so I thought, I'm going to take some medicine so that I'm as close to peak as I could be in the last class of the day. And I'd also had the opportunity to give someone else my seat on a van that was going to a big store. We don't have access to stores out here very easily. And so like once a week, they're going to send out a van. And because we're still in not strict COVID-19 restrictions, we're still careful about that. And so they didn't want to get a big bus and put all of the teachers who wanted to go out to the store on the bus. I think there might have been other excuses, other real reasons, but they said because of COVID. So there were only like a number of like 6 seats available on this van to go to this large grocery hypermarket store. And I originally had a seat on that bus because I had very quickly replied that I want to go do my shopping. But then one of my friends who is also teaching here really wanted to go. And so I gave up my seat on the bus for that friend. And that friend promised to buy the things that I thought I wanted the most. So there was that thing there. And so that was a benefit for me. And I didn't want to overstep my bounds of demanding that this friend do stuff for me that might put too much stress on him when his time in the store is also limited. So there was also that potential for falling into a trap of the king of discs in that situation, and I think I avoided it very well. But still, I got that headache. But the headache is over now. I took some medicine. The headache is over now. But I do think that Ten of Swords was a foreshadowing or a warning of headache. Now, swords, mental pain, right? A headache, maybe. What do you think? Do you think that might have been what the Ten of Swords was telling me in this spread as advice of warning of careful? Or maybe just a prediction? I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Tell me, what do you think that Ten of Swords meant for me? Or ask me a question, maybe to clarify what I was trying to say. If you're still with me, hit the thumbs up button so that YouTube knows that you liked this, and it will draw more eyes to the channel. It will help the channel. And hit the subscribe button so that you know that when I upload videos, you will get an alarm, a notification that there is a new video. And also in the description box below, I've got links to both this beautiful, beautiful Tarot of the Holy Light by Christine Payne-Towler. This is available now. And also to the color version of the Egyptian Tarot. This is still a mass market deck, and it is still available at a very reasonable price. So it's on Amazon. I'll have the link to Amazon in the description box below. Unfortunately, this charcoal gray and white deck is very, very out of print. And you can go on eBay and pay a little chunk of change to get that one if you want, but I won't have a link for that. I'll have the mass market down there. It's a good deck. The mass market deck is a very good deck, and I like it. It's easier to see, if that makes sense. And also, if you want a reading from me, my email address is below. thehangedmaninthemoon@gmail.com. Send me an email. Say, I want a reading. I'll help you with whatever question you want asked. If I can do it, I'll do it. I'm here for you. Yeah, and that's it for today. So after this video is uploaded, I'm going to do my daily draw for tomorrow. So come back and check that out. And friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.